Well, anyway, thank you, Ahmed, for that feedback. This is what people have been talking to us about right now today, so thank you for that update. Human rights groups say that a draft counterterrorism law in Saudi Arabia would actually grant harsher punishments and fewer legal rights for political dissenters. It would also grant the government greater surveillance powers. Critics say the law, which was leaked to Amnesty International last week, targets citizen protests rather than actual terror threats. On Twitter, people are not happy about this at all. Ahmed, what kind of stuff have they been saying?
We've seen tweets coming in from all over the world about this. Jay Rawson saying that when Amnesty International actually criticized, the Saudi government for their proposed terror laws, Saudi shut down access to their website. As you can see, this is an image that people and users got in Saudi Arabia when they were trying to go to Amnesty. But then we also see tweets, from London saying even the Saudi kingdom now knows the power of grassroots activism, and that Saudi terror law is a small sign of fear from people power. And then inside Saudi Arabia, we've seen tweets coming out from Nawara82 saying you control people with two things, religion and fear. And Saudi terror law ensures that Saudi has all its bases covered. And one last tweet criticizing the law says Saudi terror law is the true equalizer of Saudi society. We are all guilty until proven innocent.
Okay, so there are obviously some really strong thoughts on this.
Yeah, actually, in a couple of years ago, in 2008, if I remember the date well, our government, the Egyptian government, wanted, or people were calling for ending the emergency status in the country. So the government came up with the idea of creating an anti-terrorism law. I think their definition of the word terrorism is about what terrorizes them as regimes, not about the general concept of terrorism, which we understand.
This is a perfect way to get into the next element, because I really want to get some insight into what is being defined as terrorism in this law. Joining us via Skype to discuss this is Dina El Malmoun. She's a researcher with Amnesty International who focuses on Saudi Arabia. Dina, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you.
Dina, tell us, what is defined as terrorism under this proposed Saudi law?
Well, actually, this is one of the problems, which is the definition is so broad and vague that it can include matters that relate to exercise of right to freedom of expression. For example, if you look at the definition in Article 1, you will find that it includes terms such as endangering the national unity, or halting the basic law of the country, or undermining the status of the country and its position and standing in the world. Now that is very vague and could extend to mean anything that would include a criticism of the country, of the kingdom, or of the policies of the government. And as such, we oppose this broad definition because we think it's not in line with international law. Well, what we say is that the Saudi government, and indeed other governments as well, not only have the right to legislate and take action in relation to terrorism and terrorist crimes, but they actually have a duty to do this. What is not allowed, however, and what is not permitted in international law is to use that as a tool to repress dissent, and this is part of the problem. The other problem is that even if you want to try to fight terrorism, you do that within the bounds of the law. For example, if you look at the law as it currently stands, the draft law, I should say, it doesn't give rights to detainees in terms of it allows detention without charge or trial for prolonged periods. It allows for incommunicado detention. Basically, the authorities can decide not to allow you to contact your family or lawyer. So even if there is someone who is a suspect in a terrorist crime, that person should still have those rights. And we do those for different grounds. As far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, we have three main grounds. One of them is the broad definition. The second one is the rights of detainees. And the third one is the unfettered authority given to the Ministry of Interior to take whatever action it deems necessary to protect internal security without any judicial supervision or oversight.
Dalia?
Also, the timing of issuing this law or wanting to issue this law makes us very suspicious about why they want to do it now. You have mentioned several terrorist incidents that happened over the past years. Why they didn't issue the anti-terrorism law at that time? It was mostly needed, but now it's not needed. This brings us again to the fact that They only care for what terrorizes them as regimes,
Mm-hmm.
and not what is really is terrorism.
Do you think that this, actually back to you, Dina, on this, do you think that this kind of law could set an example for other countries in the GCC?
Well, we do know that, for example, the GCC Convention on Fighting Terrorism is also defines terrorism in very broad terms, and we've also criticized that. And on the basis of that, some of the GCC countries have brought in laws that are also not in line with international law, and we've condemned those. But certainly, the Saudi Arabia law is one of the examples that we have seen where really the type of possibility for violations from the side of the authority are huge.
Dina, I'm curious what you might say about the perception of Saudi Arabia, not just the government, but the people living inside of the country. Obviously, lots of eyes are focused on the Middle East. We have Nawara 82 saying the world already thinks that every Saudi is a terrorist and treats us as such. Thank you, Saudi terror law, attributing, the Saudi terror law for validating their suspicions. Is there a risk there?
Well, I think the problem is we know that Saudi Arabia has always taken these steps against critics, and what this law does is on the ground that it sort of consolidates the ongoing practice anyway. Whether or not that will then have an impact on how Saudis are perceived from external actors, that is something that remains to be seen. But certainly, as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, it's never tolerated any critics and dealt with them quite harshly. I mean, protests are banned in Saudi Arabia. But despite this, we have seen people protesting. Now, the problem is now the people, if they do protest again, they will find themselves facing a terrorist crime. And once they do that, then life will become very difficult for them because, they will then be labeled a terrorist.